Hello everyone, my name is Rachel Capua and I'm joining you from the TCU Transfer Center. Welcome to our first webinar. We have Terrence Kennedy with us today from the Center for Academic Services here at TCU, and we're excited to bring you some information about advising and enrollment, information about Pass No Credit, how to change a major or a minor, and just some other helpful information that might be great for you if you're a current transfer student here at TCU. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Terrence Kennedy, friend and colleague here on campus, and we'll get started.
All right, thank you, Rachel. Good afternoon, this is Terrence Kennedy, Academic Advisor, Center for Academic Services. For some of you, pleased to be talking to you again. As you may remember me from a little presentation at Transfer Orientation, Academics TCU, where I tried in 45 minutes to tell you everything I knew about TCU. Rachel was gracious enough to give me another 45 or so minutes to tell you even more about what I know at TCU to help you be successful while you're here. So go ahead, sit back, relax. Please take out some paper and take notes, as this will be a really informative presentation with plenty of jewels that will help you through your first advising experience at Texas Christian University. So let's go ahead and get started. All right, so academic advising at TCU. As a transfer student, you've been through academic advising before, but I was at another institution and we all do it a little differently. So let me give you a little bit of an idea of how it's done here at TCU. First, what is academic advising? Academic advising is a process in which you, the student, and your faculty member or staff member, depending on where you're advised, will work in developing plans and clarifying your career and your academic goals. All students should meet with their academic advisor at least once each semester. After all, they are here to help you, but you're only required to meet with your advisor in your first 4 semesters at TCU. So in your first 4 semesters, you do have to meet with your advisor prior to enrolling in your classes. In these meetings, you'll work with your advisor to discuss your academic records, which may include your grades, transcripts, evaluations of transfer coursework, and your degree plans. The reason why we have you do this advising, the mandatory advising first 4 semesters, to teach you the process to make sure that someone is checking in on you at least once a semester to make sure you're on track, to answer your questions, but most importantly, to ensure that you are on a path to graduate on time. We don't want you to stay here any longer than you have to. With good advising, that being a collaborative process between you and your academic advisor, you should be able to get out of here in a timely manner if you trust the process and you participate. So step 1 in preparing for academic advising is to go through this checklist. So who is your academic advisor? That's a really important part, but who is your academic advisor? When do you enroll in classes? And what may be preventing you from enrolling? So on this slide, you'll see that I did give you a little bit of information. When you're putting together your spring schedule, you'll normally meet with your advisor in the month of November. For your fall schedule, you meet with your advisor in the month of April. That April meeting is also when you would talk to your advisor about summer classes, and that's something we'll touch on a little bit later in this presentation. On this slide, this is a screenshot of your student center. You access this through your my.tcu.edu portal, and while it isn't the highest resolution image, it still gives you an idea of where to find things on your student center. So the first thing you'll notice is the arrow that points to enroll. Under enroll is where you go to enroll in classes, also where you drop things like that. My Academics is where you'll go to view or change your major or minor and access your academic records, such as your transfer credit report. That drop-down menu with the text Other Academic is where you'll find your degree progress report. We'll talk about that a little bit later, but your degree progress report is going to be really helpful in preparing for academic advising. On the right-hand side of the screen, you've got those 4 boxes: holds, to-do list, enrollment dates, and advisor. When it comes to academic advising, the only hold that you want to see in the first box is the academic advising hold. That's how we make academic advising mandatory at TCU. You must meet with your advisor and have that hold removed prior to your scheduled enrollment day and time. If that hold is still there, you cannot enroll in classes even if your enrollment window has opened. Other holds you may see in there will be financial holds from financial services, As a transfer student, sometimes you may see a hold in there for admission because they're still waiting on records. You should all have your immunization records in, but sometimes you see health center hold. But anytime you see a hold, basically it's something that's going to prevent you from adding and dropping classes, and you want to get it removed as soon as possible. The only one that your academic advisor can remove is the academic advising hold, which will be there in your first 4 semesters at TCU. We'll go ahead and skip over the to-do list as that isn't related to advising. In the enrollment dates box, around the time for advising, you're going to see text that will populate that box. The text will usually say, you may begin enrolling in whatever term on, and it'll give you a date. So in this example, we're going to go back in time. You see it says fall 2010, and the date they gave is June 28th, 2010. That doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. Disregard that part. But anyway, that's only half the battle. It will tell you the term, and it will tell you the date. But you also have a time on that day when you can begin enrolling in classes. To see that time, you'll notice there's a details link in the enrollment dates box. Click on that details link, and it'll give you both the day and the time. Oh, my mouse works? Oh, Rachel just told me that my mouse works. Right here, details. Click the details link, and the details link will show you both the day and the time that you're allowed to begin enrolling in your classes for that term. It's important to note that when you're looking at the fall term classes, it will automatically, sometimes it'll default to your summer. So make sure you read what's in that box. Unless you're taking summer school classes at TCU, you're not interested in your summer enrollment day and time. You want to know when you can be enrolling for the fall semester. So click details, choose the appropriate term, and you'll find your day and time. Finally, at the bottom, in that last box with advisor, that's where you'll find your advisor's name. You should get to know this person as they're the ones responsible for moving your academic advising hold. If you don't know, have not heard from them, and you want to contact them, simply click on the details link in that box, and it'll give you their contact information. While it would be nice if your academic advisor reached out to you, as a student and being knowledgeable, it is incumbent upon you to contact your academic advisor and get that hold removed, as you're responsible for your academics at TCU. It is a partnership. You're not just a passenger. You've got to be a co-driver. All right, so after we've established some of that baseline information, then we have to talk about building a schedule. Now this is going to be different than what you did at orientation, as you're pretty much going to be on your own for this part. You want to take something to your academic advisor. You don't just want to show up empty-handed. So I'm going to walk through some of the resources you can use to put together a tentative schedule and have a better understanding of what's required for you and your degree plan at TCU. So first, a quick overview of the TCU degree. If you remember back from orientation, our magic number is 124. In order to graduate with a degree from TCU, you have to complete at least 124 hours for a bachelor's degree. Of those 124, 58 have to be done here at TCU. So even if you transferred in an associate's, or some of you transferred in like 80 some odd hours, at least 58 of those 124 have to be completed here at TCU. So what goes into that 124? So take a look at this pie chart here, and we've got 4 pieces of the pie. Not everyone's going to have these pieces, but for illustrative purposes, we'll talk about all of them. First, you have your major. So your major is going to be the biggest piece of the pie. That's why you're here. That's your major area of study. With your major, you're going to want to think about not just the courses for your major, but anything that goes along with your major. If you recall back to orientation, we have different requirements for each major, but even based on type of degree that you decide to pursue. Some majors are language, some have different associated requirements in math and science. Typically, your Bachelor of Arts degree requires foreign language. You have to get to the 4th level of that foreign language to satisfy the BA requirement. Associated requirements, you'll see those in business, you'll see those in economics, so on and so forth. Those are usually math, and it really just depends on your type of degree. So when you say you're a psychology major, for instance, you've got to be specific. Are you a Bachelor of Science, which is a BS, or are you a Bachelor of Arts, a BA, because your requirements will differ. Some of you may be required to complete a minor. Minors at TCU are typically 18 hours, and again, your major requirements will dictate whether or not you have to complete a minor. Everyone has to do the TCU Core, and we'll break that down on beginning on the next slide. And then you have electives. Electives are really tricky because everyone has a different amount of electives they have to do. Remember, all these pieces of the pie are adding up to 124. So electives are there to make up that difference between your major, your minor, if required, and the core, and the 124. So it really just depends on your area of study, your degree plan, so on and so forth. Electives are anything that you're not using for your major, your minor, or the core curriculum. Again, for emphasis. Electives are anything you're not using for the major, your minor, or the TCU core curriculum. So what may be a minor for me, elective, for me, may not be an elective for Rachel, just depending on our major and how we're going about doing the TCU core curriculum. But I'm sorry that it's such a loose definition that there isn't an elective section of the catalog, but just know that if you're not using it for your major, your minor, or the core, it will count as an elective. Electives are not bad things. Everything you take at TCU does count and moves you closer to your magic number of 124. What we've got on the screen right now is what we call your degree progress report. The degree progress report makes advising both for you and your advisor very, very easy. So I want to walk through some of the things on your degree progress report. If you remember back to the screenshot of your Student Center, you can access your degree progress report from this drop-down menu. And you'll see the degree progress report, and you'll go ahead and run that report. You should definitely take that report with you to your advising meeting, just because it helps so much. So a few things about your degree progress report. At the top, you'll see information about your GPA, hours earned, transferred, so on and so forth. If I didn't break this to you at orientation, I'll break it to you now, because if this is your first time going through advising at TCU, your first time seeing your degree progress report, you may be a little dismayed that you don't actually have a GPA. When you're admitted to TCU, kind of like when you go from high school to college, how your high school GPA doesn't come with you, when you transfer from a different school to TCU, that GPA doesn't follow you. That GPA was just there to help you get into TCU, maybe get you a scholarship. But once you get to TCU, we hit the reset button and you're starting from scratch. So there are two ways to look at it. Either we've got a 0.0 and there's no place to go but up, or we've got a 4.0 and we're doing our darndest to maintain it. But that's going to be your GPA, and it's only going to show your GPA on hours earned at TCU. Only classes taken at TCU count towards your GPA. Next, you're going to see TCU earned. So that's the number of hours you've actually earned at TCU. Next to that, you're going to see transferred. This is where it's going to be very important for you to ensure the accuracy of your degree progress report, because if you are expecting a certain number of transfer hours and they aren't there, then that's an opportunity to talk to the registrar's office to figure out where those hours are. And if you need to have those transcripts resent from the other institution, to have those reflected on your degree progress report. You'll also see test credit. Test credit is going to be credit through AP or IB, but that should be accurate as well. If that isn't reflected, you can have those scores resent to TCU, or you can print off your score report and take that to the registrar's office. Other credit, sometimes if you've got some language credits, some correspondence, things like that, it'd be under other credit. But you want to make sure that your hours are there. This is going to be important because your enrollment day and time is determined by the number of hours completed. So if you should have 60 hours completed, transfer or test credit, and it's showing 0, that's going to have a huge impact on when you enroll in your classes. And you want to make sure to have those credits there, because the sooner you can enroll, the more options you're going to have for your classes. So if those credits are not correct, you've got a little bit of time to get them to the registrar, have those reflected on your academic record, and have the appropriate enrollment day and time. Next, you'll have your cumulative hours. You'll have your hours in progress, which are the hours you're currently enrolled in at TCU. You'll also see your academic classification. So in this instance, this student is a sophomore, and you want to make sure that that's right. If you're not sure how that all works, make sure to ask your advisor, and they can break down the number of hours required for each classification here at TCU. In the next box, you'll have an opportunity to make sure that your major and minor are correct. So in this case, this student is ASPM, Advanced Pre-Major, and their minor is underneath it. This determines your advisor. So sometimes, you can be confusion about what you put on your application, what they classified you under, but this is actually official. So if major in that box is not the major that you want, make sure to talk to somebody about changing your major so you can be advised by their appropriate advisor and their appropriate department. And then you also have your advisor's name. Once again, get to know this person as they are here to help you. The best part about your degree progress report is on this first page, this should seem somewhat familiar to you, as it's the core curriculum, but it's the core curriculum with your information. So any of your transfer credit, any of the classes you have in progress, any of the classes you've already passed, they'll show up in here. So as opposed to having a generic conversation about the core, like we do at orientation, with your degree progress report, we could talk about what you've done and what you have left to complete for the core curriculum. So a brief overview of the TCU Core. Again, you have all 4 years to complete the TCU Core curriculum. It isn't a race, but there are ways to be more efficient than others, and we'll talk about that as we move through. Also, your core courses can be found in your major and your minor courses. So that's one way to knock out core without having to go and do any sort of extra for it, because your major and minor classes may be counted for the core. The core has 3 sections: human experiences and endeavors, heritage, mission, vision, and values, and essential competencies. So 3 sections of the TCU Core curriculum. The first part we're going to talk about is human experiences and endeavors. Human experience and endeavors is the largest part of the TCU Core curriculum, as it requires 27 hours. Those 27 hours are divided into humanities, social sciences, natural science, and fine arts. We need 9 hours of, or 3 courses. We need 9 hours of social sciences, 6 hours of natural sciences, and 3 hours of fine arts. Your humanities are going to be courses like literature, non-U.S. history, religion, and philosophy. Your social sciences will be pretty much anything you find in Adirond College Liberal Arts other than the subjects I mentioned. So criminal justice, political science, sociology, geography, history, U.S. history will be social science core. Your natural sciences will come from science and engineering, and you do need 2. And what's important with the natural sciences is that in most cases, they do have to come from 2 different departments. So for instance, you couldn't use 2 biology courses. You could take a biology, but then for your second course for the core, you'd have to take a chemistry, an environmental science, a geology, and astronomy, so on and so forth. And then you have your fine arts. TCU just requires you to take 3 hours of fine arts or 1 class. And the thing about the fine arts is that they're just appreciation courses. So if you can take painting if you want, you can take a guitar class if you want, you can take ceramics if you want, but those classes won't actually count for the core. Core classes are appreciation courses. So what field of art would you like to appreciate? Would you like to take a survey of theater? Would you like to take an art history class? Would you like to take a survey of music class? But in these classes, you're not going to act, you aren't going to sing, you aren't going to paint. Those are actual performance classes. These are just educational classes to give you a better appreciation of that particular art form. So that's fine arts. So human experience and endeavors, 27 hours, 3 humanities, 3 social sciences, 2 natural sciences, and a fine art. And we've got some examples that will be popping up on the screen.
Darren, can I ask you a quick question?
Sure.
So for transfer students who only have, let's say, 2 or 3 years here at TCU, is it possible to get the core done in that amount of time, or can you give just some quick thoughts on that time frame, since they don't necessarily always have the 4 years to complete it?
It's a good question, Rachel. Actually, in a couple slides, we're going to get to double dipping, and we'll talk about how you can get through the core efficiently. And I'll also make sure to mention a website that you can use to be even more efficient.
Excellent.
Thank you. All right, so the next part of the core is heritage, mission, vision, and values. With heritage, mission, vision, and values, you just need to complete one of each of these requirements. So you have to complete one religion, one historical traditions, one literary traditions, one cultural awareness, one global awareness, and one citizenship and social values. You'll notice that there are asterisks over your cultural awareness, your global awareness, and your citizenship and social values. That's to indicate that those classes cannot, those core requirements cannot be transferred to TCU. So you have to do your CA, your GA, and your CSV at TCU. What that means is that anything else we've talked about so far, including religion, can be transferred from another institution. But your CA, your GA, and your CSV must be completed here at TCU. Oh, we still have the animation with the Hummer. Mm-hmm. That's a little dated. Yeah. And what you're seeing on the screen are just general examples. There are a lot of different ways to satisfy different core requirements, and there are actually some surprises. So what you really want to focus on with the core are the core codes. So on this slide, for instance, the core code for religion is RT, the core code for historical traditions is HT, the core code for literary traditions is LT, and then CA, GA, and CSV. If a class does not have that core code, no matter how much you want it to count for that part of the core, it does not count. So you can search by core codes, and I'll show you a little bit about that later on in the presentation. And then the final part of the core, probably the most straightforward part of the core, is the central competencies. These are the classes that you've been taking all the way through K-12 because they're really important. So everyone has to take at least one math class for the TCU Core curriculum. Obviously, if you're a math major, you're going to take more than one math class, but for the core, everyone has to take at least one. And the math class you need is dictated by your major. So if you are let's say you're a history major, then you'll want to talk to your advisor about the math that you need for history so that you don't end up taking a math that either won't count for history or a math that's way more advanced than you're actually going to need for your major. Everyone has to take a speech class, that's oral communication, here at TCU. So you've got to be able to do math, you have to be able to speak. You also have to take 2 written communication classes. For a lot of you, you probably transfer these in. These are intro composition, intermediate composition, but those do have to be completed for the TCU Core curriculum. And then you'll notice writing emphasis 1 and writing emphasis 2, and you'll see those asterisks have reappeared. Your writing emphasis classes do have to be completed at TCU, hence the asterisk, but they're really not something we talk much about when we're talking about the core curriculum because your writing emphasis classes generally appear in your major as you're working through your upper division courses your junior and senior year. So I like to say you don't have to seek out your writing emphasis classes. When it's time for you to take them, they'll find you. And we've got some more examples. Just to reiterate, your CA, your GA, CSV, and your writing emphasis 1 and 2 must be taken at TCU. Now, as an aside, one thing that can be tricky for transfer students, especially, is what happens if you transferred in a class that would have counted for one of these at TCU. Examples are psychology, sociology, and political science or government. If you transferred in psychology credit, then you do not want to take the psychology course at TCU that satisfies CA Core because you can't have credits for you can't have multiple credits for the same class. So even though we didn't give you the CA credit for your psychology class, it's still intro psychology. Do not take intro psychology here or you lose that credit. Same thing goes for sociology. Sociology at TCU, intro, is a cultural awareness. If you transferred in credit for sociology while we did not give you that cultural awareness, if you were to take the class at TCU, it would wipe out that credit you brought with you. Please don't do that. Government is a CSV. So if you take a intro to American Texas Government at TCU, and you brought government credit with you, they'll go ahead and cancel each other out. So while your CA, GA, and CSV have to be taken here, do not take a CA, GA, or CSV course that's equivalent to something you transferred with you, because you'll end up losing that credit. So back to Rachel's question about how to efficiently get through the core curriculum. One of the big ways to get through the core curriculum efficiently is through double dipping. You'll notice at the top of the screen that it says the core can be done in a range of 39 to 63 hours, and up to 24 hours can be. So what is double dipping? Double dipping is when you're taking one course and it's satisfying multiple parts of the TCU core curriculum. Our example is Religion 10023, Understanding Religion Communities. That's really just a fancy title for Survey of World Religions. So you notice that it's sitting in the humanities line, so it's obvious it's going to satisfy humanities. But we also have an X under religious traditions. That lets us know that this class is satisfying both humanities for human experience and endeavors and religious traditions for heritage, mission, vision, and values. One class, multiple core curriculum requirements. This note is going to be very important because sometimes as you're searching for classes, you'll run across classes like Anthropology 20623, and it'll list 3 core codes. In this example, it lists a SSC, which is social science, CA, which is cultural awareness, and GA, which is global awareness. You cannot double dip within heritage, mission, vision, and values. So for this class, you would get the social science because it's human experience and endeavors, and you get either the CA or the GA, but you cannot have both. Now, talking about efficiency, what normally happens with the TCU core curriculum, we'll go back to a general screen. We'll go back here. So for human experience and endeavors, you remember you need 3 humanities, right? What normally happens is one of your humanities will double dip religion, another one of your humanities will double dip literature, and then you'll be left with one more humanity. That humanity can be another religion, it could be another literature, it could be a non-U.S. history, or it can be philosophy. There are also some majors in which you can go ahead and get humanity credit, but that's typically how you do your humanities. Your social sciences will normally double dip with your cultural awareness, your global awareness, and your citizenship and social values. Your natural sciences, on the whole, don't do a lot of double dipping, but there are some natural science classes that will double dip. One that comes to mind is astronomy. Astronomy double dips both natural science and global awareness. And you'll also find some classes that double dip within fine arts, such as Survey of Dance. Survey of Dance double dips both fine arts and cultural awareness. I didn't create a slide for this, but since you're an attentive student and you took my advice at the beginning of the presentation, you got out a pen and paper, and you're going to write down core.tcu.edu, core.tcu.edu. I feel like I may be one of the few people who actually uses the core website, but if you go to the core website, you can click on a link that will show you all courses approved by core requirement, and it'll pull up an entire list of every class that satisfies that core requirement. And you may be surprised what classes you find that are in your major and minor that can be used to satisfy the TCU core curriculum. Now that we talked about the core, we could talk about TCU class search. So when we're putting together our schedule, we have to look at what we brought with us and what we have credit for and assign our degree progress report. We have to understand the core. We just walked through that. And so now we have to start looking at courses. And so this is where TCU class search comes in. TCU class search is a really what's the term I'm looking for? It's really helpful. That's to give I've got better words than that. It's a fully functional search engine. That's what I wanted to say. So you can search by term, you can search by session, you can search by location, by subject, by course number, section, class attribute, course level, status, which is any open or closed. You can search by instructor, day of the week, when a class starts, you can also search by the core curriculum. So you can go ahead and put in any search term you want to find a class that satisfies whatever it is that you happen to be looking for. This is where those core codes are really important. So on the screen, we've got those arrows pointing to fine arts, cultural awareness. If you put that in, that'll go ahead and let you know, pull up every single class that satisfies both those parts of the core curriculum. So this is also a really good way to go and search for classes to satisfy parts of the core, but also your major classes if you're not quite sure what you need to take. When you do a search on my.tcu.edu, when you do a search on TCU Class Search, what you see on the screen is what comes up. So let me explain some of the things that you see on the screen. In the far left-hand column, you're going to see the class number. The class number is the number you enter during registration. If you have everything else about the class but you don't have that number, you're just going to be staring at the computer screen. You have to have the class number in order to register for your classes. In the column next to it, you're going to see the subject and you're going to see the catalog number. The catalog number is different than the course number. Course numbers change every semester, but a catalog number remains the same. That's how we talk about classes. For instance, so I'm talking about English 10803, that's intro composition, and that doesn't change. English 10803 is English 10803 today, English 10803 tomorrow, English 10803 in perpetuity. That's your subject and a catalog number. The important thing to note about the catalog number is that it indicates the course level. If the first digit is a 1 or a 2, it's a lower division course. Lower division generally means you don't need any sort of prerequisites to take the course, no sort of real background. It's an intro level course. Don't be intimidated by 20,000 level classes. Some departments don't have 10,000 level classes, but if it has a 1 or a 2, it's generally fine for you to take it without any previous coursework in that area. Next we have 30,000 level classes and 40,000 level classes. These are upper division classes. Generally, upper division classes are going to be classes that do have prereqs where you do need some sort of background before you step into those classes. And I wouldn't take upper division classes for electives or for the core curriculum. Your upper division classes should primarily come from your major and from your minor. In the next column, two columns over, you'll see the section number. The section number is going to be important because that lets you know when the class meets. Not going to break down the code and how that all works, but basically if you find yourself writing down multiple classes that have the same section, they meet at the same time, you can only take one of them. Another important thing to note about the section number is the first digit. If the first digit in the section number is a 6, that indicates that it's an honors class, and only honors students are allowed to take honors courses, with one exception. If you want to be pre-health, if you want to be a doctor, or you want to be a vet or an optometrist, so on and so forth, you have the right and the privilege and the requirement to take honors biology. But other than that, if the section number begins with a 6 and you're not an honors student, you cannot take that class. In the next column, you'll see LCLs, LECs, LABs, so on and so forth. The one you really need to know is an LCL. If you see an LCL, that stands for lecture with a lab, meaning that you must enroll in both an LCL and a lab section. This happens with some of our speech classes, but it primarily happens with our natural science classes. In the next column, you'll see the core codes. We've talked about that. The next column after that, you'll see the course title, and you'll also see the instructor's name. Column after that, you'll see the day the class starts. Column after that, you'll see the days the class meets and the times. Just as a refresher, M is for Monday, T is for Tuesday, W is for Wednesday, R is for Thursday, and F is for Friday. On TCU Class Search, our class times are listed on a 24-hour format. Don't let that trip you up. Simply subtract 12, and you'll have the time that you're used to seeing. The column after that, you'll see where the class meets, and then the column next to that, you'll see the course status. So you'll either see open, closed, or you'll see a department permit. Obviously, open means you can go ahead and sign up for a class. If it's closed, you should probably look elsewhere, but we'll talk about what to do if the class is closed a little later. And then if you see department permit, that means that you have to contact either the instructor or the department to get a permission number to enroll in that class. Next column after that, you'll see at the top number be the number of students enrolled, the bottom number will be the maximum enrollment, and then in the final column, you'll see whether or not there's a wait list. If there's a number on the bottom, then that lets you know how many people can wait list the class. I guess while we're here, we'll explain the wait list. So some of you may come across classes where you're trying to enroll in a class and you notice that there's a seat open, but there are 4 people on the wait list. And if you're advising a nerd like me, you're probably wondering, how does that happen? There are 4 people on the wait list, yet none of them were able to roll off the wait list to close this class. Well, that's because there are certain conditions for the wait list. In order to come off the wait list, it can't take you over the enrollment limit for the term. So at TCU, we're on flat rate tuition. 12 to 18 hours is the same price, 18 hours being the maximum enrollment limit. But that enrollment limit doesn't go into effect until the first day of the semester. Prior to the first day of the semester, the enrollment limit is 17 hours. So let's say, for instance, you're enrolled in 15 hours and you waitlist a class, a 3-hour class. If a seat comes open, you won't be able to enroll in that class because your 15 plus that 3 puts you at 18. And remember, you can't be enrolled in 18 hours until the first day of the semester. So you have to abide by the enrollment limit. That's number 1. Number 2, if you are enrolled in a class and then you waitlist a different section of the same class, you'll never come off of that waitlist. You can't be enrolled in multiple sections of the same class. So, for instance, if you are enrolled in a psychology class, but you'd rather take it with a different professor so you get on that professor's waitlist, you're just taking up space on the waitlist because you actually have secured a seat, so you're ineligible to come off the waitlist. The third thing you need to know about the waitlist is you cannot waitlist a class that meets at the same time as a class that you're already enrolled in. We've come a long way with science and physics, but we still aren't to the point where you'd be in 2 places at one time. So if you're going to come off the waitlist, make sure you're not violating the enrollment limit, make sure that you're not enrolled in a different section of the same class, and make sure you're not enrolled in a class that meets at the same time. As long as you don't violate any of those rules, if a seat comes open, you'll go ahead and get that seat if you're the next person up in the queue. Generally though, unless you really need a class, I wouldn't recommend waitlisting, especially if there's a seat of the class. It may not be at the time you want, it may not be with the professor you want, but for me, I don't like to gamble, so I'd much rather secure a seat in the class and know I have it than let that seat go to somebody else and just hope and wish that someone will drop the class so I can get a seat in the class. But that's personal preference. I'm just an academic advisor. I offer advice. You do what you want with it. In terms of resources to build your schedule, I've got a few on the screen. The advising guide is something that we give out at TCU to our incoming freshmen. It isn't something we share with transfer students, typically because the classes we list in there are first-year recommendations, so classes you would take as a first-year student in a particular major. But if you're in between majors, if you are a student in a situation where you are just beginning the classes for the major, you can access the advising guide and the first-year recommendations on our website, www.acs.tcu.edu. You can also access the TCU undergraduate catalog if you want to get a full view of all your major requirements. That's catalog.tcu.edu. You'll have to know the college in which your major is located, and then you'll click on your major. It'll tell you all the requirements, how many hours, any particular math or sciences, any special requirements in terms of minimum grades, GPAs, things like that. But that's all in the TCU catalog if you want to get a macro level view of what you're going to need to do to complete your major and or your minor. We also have the online advising toolkit through the registrar's website, which will kind of walk you through the process, give you some more supplementary information. And then depending on your major, you can visit either the college or the department's website, and they'll actually have 4-year degree plans on those websites. I know all the majors in the Harris College of Nursing have 4-year plans on their website. Excuse me, Harris College of Nursing, Health Sciences. Don't forget the Health Sciences. The business school, they've got 4-year plans for accounting, finance, marketing, management, so on and so forth. ADRAN is also starting to get on the boat with that. So you can always visit your department or your college's website to see if they've got advising materials, and you may even come across a 4-year plan where all you got to do is print that off and check off your classes as you go on your way to graduation. So we've talked about the major part and how to prepare and about classes, but academic advising is about more than just your classes. If it was just picking classes, we can automate it all, but it does require a relationship, and you do talk to your advisor about other things. So let's talk about some of the concerns you may talk to your advisor about. And we're going to talk specifically about how are you doing in your current classes, your major and or your minor options, and then things like study abroad and internships. So, your current classes, you're definitely going to want to have a conversation with your advisor about how you're doing in your current classes, good or bad. The key here is to be honest, because as an academic advisor, they can only be as effective as the information you're willing to share. So make sure that you do let them know what's going on with you. Make sure that you're honest with them so they can help give you advice that's going to help you make the best decision about your particular situation. So you may want to talk to your advisor about dropping in class. One of the things, well, depending on where you're transferring, on where you transferred from, this could be a kind of a sticky issue because at state schools, they tend to record your withdrawals and things like that can affect your financial aid. At TCU, we keep no record of your withdrawals. So if you need to withdraw, there is no penalty in terms of it changing your tuition or anything like that. Is dropping in class going to help you in your progress toward graduation on 124? No, not really. But if you've got to drop a class in order to preserve your GPA to keep a scholarship or to keep your GPA at a place to get into a particular major you want, it may be something you want to talk to your academic advisor about. Sometimes students don't want to drop a class because it's going to drop them below 12 hours, and there are concerns about financial aid, housing, so on and so forth. In some cases, you can actually drop below 12 hours. But before doing so, I would make sure to talk to housing to make sure you understand how many hours you need to remain in TCU housing, but also talk to scholarships and financial aid to understand any consequences, repercussions of dropping below 12 hours. But in many cases, it is an option. But before you do it, please make sure to talk to the appropriate people to make sure you understand whether or not you can and what you'll need to do to rectify that in a further semester. But don't feel like you're trapped. If you don't know, just ask. We also have a pass no credit option. So the pass no credit option is something at TCU where generally when you enroll in a class, you're taking it for both your credit hours and to be calculated towards your GPA. When you take a class pass no credit, we remove the GPA calculation. You're strictly taking it for the credit hours. You're allowed to use the pass no credit option on up to 2 courses at TCU, a maximum of 8 hours. 2 courses, 8 hours. It has no impact on your GPA, but you can only use it on classes for the core curriculum and electives. You cannot use pass no credit on classes for your major or your minor or even associated requirements. If you're not clear, make sure to talk to your advisor about it, and they can help you figure out whether or not you can use pass no credit. Do not be afraid to use your pass no credit option. Pass no credit is insurance. Things happen. Things get kind of crazy in our personal lives, academically, so on and so forth. So if you need to use the pass no credit in order to help you maintain and achieve your academic goals, there's absolutely no judgment there. If anything, you should be applauded for taking full advantage of your resources. I've had students use both their pass no credits in the same semester, and it helped them get into the business school because they need to get their GPA to a certain level. So don't necessarily think about your using pass no credit in a negative context. Your circumstances are your circumstances. Use all the tools available to you to achieve your goals. And then sometimes if we decide not to drop or we decide not to use pass no credit, we may end up failing a course or making a D, which passes but does nothing positive for a GPA. At TCU, there are no limits on repeating a course. You don't have to ask special permission or anything like that. You simply re-enroll in the course. When you repeat a course at TCU, your new grade replaces the old grade. There are no averages. Your new grade replaces the old grade, and your new grade is what's calculated into your GPA. So while your old grade will still show up on your transcript, only your new grade will be factored into your GPA. So keep that in mind in the event that you have a really bad semester. The quickest way to recover your GPA is to retake classes. And actually, if you fail a class and you retake it, you've actually got nothing to lose. Because if you pass the class, it will raise your GPA and will also get you the credit hours that you didn't have if you failed it the first time around. So if you fail a class, I'd go ahead and repeat it because you've got nothing to lose. You can only go up. If you find yourself in a situation where you're wanting to change your major or your minor, this is going to be a personal plug for my office. Come and talk to us. I work in the Center for Academic Services. We're located in the basement of Sadler Hall. Our phone number is 817-257-7486. Again, our phone number is area code 817-257-7486. Our office advises all students at Addran College, fashion merchandising, and interior design, but our primary focus is undecided students. So we have to know a little bit about every major on campus and how to get you there. So don't be afraid to come talk to us. It doesn't necessarily mean you're going to end up changing to one of our majors or the pre-major, but if you'd like to know your options, that's what we're here for. Now for majors that have specific requirements, one of the big ones is business. So if you transfer to TCU and you weren't able to transfer into business, you may be wondering, how can I get into the business school? In order to get into pre-business at TCU, you have to apply. Applications are taken once a year, always due by April 15th, and you have to have a 3.25 cumulative GPA in order to be a competitive applicant. Now, the business school will wait until your spring grades post. So if this is your first semester at TCU, and if the fall is your first semester at TCU, when you apply, you don't necessarily have to have that 3.25. But by the end of the spring semester, you'll need to have that 3.25. If you're listening to this in the spring semester, well, no, you won't have a GPA by April 15th. The business will wait until May when spring grades post to make that decision. So if you want to change into pre-business, you need a 3.25 cumulative GPA and you have to apply. Applications are due April 15th. For strategic communication, aka advertising public relations, you have to have a 2.5 minimum GPA and a 3.0 to be competitive. They have application forums in which you have to go and learn about the major, you have to sign some documents, and you have to submit 2 writing samples. But those are offered both in the fall and in the spring. So if you apply in the fall, you'll begin taking courses in the spring. If you apply in the spring, you begin taking courses in the fall. More information can be found out about that on the Strategic Communication website. For the Neely, for pre-business, on the Neely School website. For minors, most minors, there aren't any GPA requirements, you just declare. But for those of you interested in the general business minor, you have to have a 2.5 cumulative GPA in order to change your minor to pre-business. And as we're talking about GPAs, going back to something I said earlier, these are only based on TCU grades. Remember, when you come to TCU, we hit the reset button, you no longer have a GPA. So in order to do any of these, you have to complete at least a semester at TCU in order to have a GPA to apply to pre-business, to apply to StratCon, or change your minor to general business.
How do you declare a minor?
All right, so the question was, how do you declare? So we're going to go all the way back to our Student Center slide. All right, so on your Student Center, is the reason it's called Student Center, is the hub for everything. Under the My Academics link, you click there and you'll see a link that says view/change your major/minor. And that's where you'll go through and you'll click and make your selections for your major and your minor. For majors that require an application or a minimum GPA requirement, obviously you can't just go and declare those. You have to meet those requirements first. For most majors on campus, you just go and you submit your request to change your major and minor combination. It goes to the dean, and a couple days later you're going to email back letting you know if your request was accepted or if your request was denied. In the event that your request was denied, they'll usually let you know why. And you'll just have to rectify the situation and go ahead and resubmit your request after you meet whatever requirements they're saying you do not meet. But that's all through your my.tcu.edu on your Student Center through the My Academics link. Other questions? All right. Well, thank you for your time and your attention. I do apologize if I've left you with an extreme case of tired head. It was a lot of information. If you have any questions about any of this information, you can access most of it through our website, which is www.acs.tcu.edu. Again, that's www.acs.tcu.edu. That's Center for Academic Services. Again, our phone number is area code 817-257-7486. We're located in Sadler Hall on the basement level in suite 1022, 1022. We're here to help. Don't feel like you're in a situation where you don't have anyone to turn to. We're the helpful place. We want to help. We want you to be successful here, be happy here, and most of all, we want you to graduate with whatever it is you want to graduate with to help you achieve your goals at TCU and after. Again, thank you for your time. This is Terrence Kennedy, and keep up the good work. Good luck with advising.
Thank you so much, Terrence. Everyone, I hope you found today's information helpful, and as we close up this webinar, I'm going to just show you really quickly some information about our Transfer Center. We've gotten some questions in regards just to how to keep up with latest updates and news, and so I just want to take you really quickly to two things. One is our website, and if you go to www.sds.tcu.edu, it will take you to this main page. Under Students here at the top, you can go to TCU Transfer Center. When you click that, we have just a platform of information for you in regards to our programming efforts, information about where the Transfer Center is located, which is in the blue. That's the front of our building. Our hours, our information, my contact details are here. If you have any questions, of course, always feel free to reach out directly. And then our new connection space is in the Grand Mark, open 7 days a week, mini fridge, microwave, great for commuter students. Feel free to check that out. Again, if you have any questions about that, feel free to let me know. I also want to take you to our Facebook page, and if you go to the TCU Transfer Center, which is just www.facebook.com/TCU Transfers. It will take you to this main page here. We keep all the latest announcements and information loaded on here, any events that are happening, any just general announcements about campus or events that are happening on campus. Everything is loaded on here. So I hope that you take advantage of those things. If you'd like to reach us here in Student Development Services, our direct phone number is 817-257-7855, and our email address is transfers@tcu.edu. Hope you have a great day. Thanks again for joining us, and we'll post this webinar on our website in addition to posting it to our Facebook page so that you have that and the slides. Have a great day, and go Frogs.